All right, so we've got another digital manufacturing series today. And as you can see, we've got the digital manufacturing and culture change as our subject today. And that's something I've kind of been building towards and really been looking forward to. It's something that is very important, not only to me, but just really to the success of any project or initiative. So I'm your presenter today. We will have some other presenters here in the near future. But for today, you've got me again, Joshua McBride. I'm a technical solution specialist with KETIV. And yeah, I've introduced myself a few times, so we'll head on. We've seen this slide a few times, just a number of companies that are sharing with us, working with us, and are involved in this series with us. We actually heard from a customer recently, a customer example, and we'll hopefully be hearing more of that in the future as well. So before we get started, we're always open to help you identify opportunities for improvement. You can reach me at joshua.mcbride@ketiv.com. I also have a LinkedIn account, and you can call me directly at any point if you have any questions or looking for some information or assistance. So we've already had our introduction. We're going to have a quick poll. We'll have about a 30-minute presentation covering digital manufacturing and culture change. And then we'll have our prize that we have each time. And we'll have some time for Q&A as well. So for anybody joining a little late here, I'm Josh. I'm a technical solution specialist with KETIV. I've been in manufacturing for about 20 years, doing manufacturing and engineering. Has been my main focus, but I've been involved in all other aspects of the business, from starting a quality department, making a company ISO, as well as plant expansions and so forth. So just a quick history there. So let's go ahead and get started with our poll. And while everyone is answering that, we will talk about how to win free stuff. So our poll for today is digital manufacturing and culture change. And, you know, how ready is your culture for the digital transformation? Just kind of where are you at in that whole world? So while everybody's answering that, we'll have a quick look at how you can win free stuff. So to win some free stuff, we have been doing a total of $75 value, which is a book and a gift card. The book we've been giving out so far has been by Chip and Dan Heath, and it's called Upstream. And we've been covering a lot of examples from that and so forth. We're actually going to switch that up, and we're going to shift to another book, which will be getting into some examples in the future, called Extreme Ownership. And it is a great book. And we'll actually be getting a little bit into that today. So let's take a quick glance at our results here. So we're kind of two sides of the extreme. We'll pull this across so we can kind of see here. So we have some still kind of assessing the concept of the digital transformation, but a number that are looking for next steps or advancing and always looking for improvement. And that's really the key, right? Where we need to always be looking for areas to improve. The reality is we can always be better, right? We're never perfect. Also, real quick, before I forget, to win free stuff, you do have to be a part of the Zoom meeting. So if you're viewing on YouTube, we will post a link so you can move over so that you can have that opportunity to win. All right, well, let's get into it. Quick review of last time, and I want to review this because we're going to be referencing back to some stuff from last time. So last time we talked about Lean Six Sigma, 5S, green manufacturing, a lot of those different manufacturing improvement methods. And I want to say they all are great. They all have good benefits, but as we know, nothing is perfect, right? And with that, there are some shortcomings that we covered, 3 key shortcomings. that we tend to see. And really the point of all that is that they're all focused on the manufacturing floor. And we talked about the fact that we really have to have a holistic view of the company and its complete interconnected systems. And that's due to the idea of the garbage in, garbage out concept, right? In other words, we're feeding our manufacturing floor, right, with all this information, and we have all these upstream systems, right? And if those upstream systems are bad, then we can't really expect our manufacturing floor not to reflect that, right? And so we talked about taking a preventative upstream approach to these problems. If we do that, then all these methods can really reach their true potential. So digital culture brings success. So let's dig into that just a little bit, because that's quite the statement, right? So we've talked about a number of studies here, and we're actually going to dig into one a little deeper that I've referenced a few times. And with this study, they ultimately found that companies that focused on digital culture achieved 90% breakthrough performance, right? That is huge, right? And the key here is, as we're talking about, it's the culture that they focused on. Notice it's not just companies that focused on digital transformation or digital manufacturing, but on digital culture, right? Whereas on the other side of that spectrum, companies that neglected digital culture, right? So we're only looking at companies that are attempting the digital transformation, attempting digital manufacturing, right? But they did not focus on culture. They neglected it. Only 17% saw that breakthrough performance that they were looking for. That is quite the contrast, right? So the point there is that success does not depend on a number of things. It does not depend on hardware, doesn't depend on software, doesn't depend on whether or not you have cloud services. It doesn't depend on whether or not you have the technical training and know-how or the proper timelines to get these things in place, and all these types of things, right? Particularly with the idea of digital manufacturing and the digital transformation. And I'm not saying these things aren't important. They are part of it, such as having the right hardware, software, automation, and so forth. Those are all important things, but those are not the things that result in success when it comes to digital transformation. In fact, I would go so far to say that when it comes really to any true initiative, whether that's a software implementation of any sort, or whether it's any initiative anywhere in the company, such as, for instance, the ideas behind 5S, one of the key things about 5S is its focus on culture, right? And so the idea here is all these things are important, but if we reference back to our last presentation, to really achieve success in these areas, we have to move upstream, right? And that's what the culture is. The culture is upstream of all these things. If we focus on the culture, then these things will naturally come as a result of that culture, right? It's the natural outflowing of that. So how do we deal with what is culture? How do we change it? How do we deal with it, right? Well, the first thing I think we really got to consider is what is valued, okay? What do we value as a company, as an organization, as a manager, or even as a floor operator? What is important to us? So there's a great study kind of about this. And it focused on purpose versus passion. And real quick, to kind of define purpose versus passion, I'll give myself as an example. I have a great passion for flight. Okay, so much so that I not just willingly, but greatly enjoy throwing myself out of an aircraft in flight, flying with what's termed a wingsuit or a squirrel suit, spreading my arms, flying myself. I have bukus. I can't even count how many aircraft models I have, the number of documentaries I've watched, the RC aircraft. I have an absolute passion for it. But yet, I don't work in the aircraft industry and never have, and have been incredibly successful because purpose is different than a passion, right? I have a completely different purpose that I work towards. So let's look at that a little bit. The University of Berkeley professor surveyed over 5,000 employees and managers to understand the makeup of star performers, exploring whether that was a distinction or there was a distinction between purpose and passion. Which one of those resulted in star performers? And employees who were passionate about their jobs, who expressed high levels of excitement about their work, still tended to be poor performers if they lacked a purpose. Okay, so people are 4 times more likely to be engaged, motivated, learn faster, and have a sense of fulfillment when they believe their work matters. All right, and the key is that this matters beyond making money. Okay, that it has a purpose beyond that, that it matters to society in a sense. Organizations experience higher stock prices and per person, per year, higher margins, higher levels of tenure, and higher net promoter scores as a result of having a purpose, right? So let's dig deeper into what I mean by purpose, right? What is valued, okay? So a study found that lifeguards voluntarily signed up for 43% more hours of work after reading stories about other lifeguards rescuing downed swimmers, right? So they didn't sign up for more work in order to get paid more. They ultimately got paid more, but money wasn't the driving factor here, right? The driving factor was this idea that they may actually save someone's life. When they were reminded of that that was the purpose of their job, was to save people, they started signing up and working more and working harder. Radiologists who were shown photos of their patients increased both the raw number and accuracy of their scans. And when nurses assembling surgical kits met the caregivers who used them, they worked 64% longer than the control group and made 50% fewer errors. Once again, because they were reminded of their purpose. Their purpose wasn't just to run this test, get the paperwork out, get it done, get paid, move on. Their purpose was to help people improve their lives, to help them in their times of need. And that resulted in higher production, fewer errors, better quality. So here's another example, and we're reaching a little bit into my passion here as well. SpaceX, right? SpaceX, they have a clearly stated goal that is constantly coming out with them. And it's not to put a bunch of satellites into space, okay, or to have the biggest, coolest, futuristic spaceship. It's to make the human species an interplanetary species. This is something that is talked about so much. That is their goal. And as a result of that goal, all these other things are happening. And they've become arguably the most successful when it comes to space flight. We're going to continue with this space flight example. One of the most famous speeches: "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win," right? We achieved one of the most incredible things that humankind has ever achieved, which was going to the moon in a time which technologically didn't seem possible, especially compared to what we have today. But they achieved that not because their purpose was, once again, to make money, to beat the Russians at the time. It was reaching for something higher and greater. KETIV, this is something we hear about a lot. We have monthly meetings, and in those monthly meetings, we talk about this, right? That we want to be the partner, right? We don't want to just be the reseller, the person that sells the software. We want to be the partner to the manufacturers. And beyond that, we want to revitalize American manufacturing and create a better society, a better tomorrow in that sense. That is our goal. And in fact, at these monthly meetings, we may never even talk about the finances. We'll talk about this, right? Moving upstream. That's the idea here. And so to expand on this a little further and kind of bring some other concepts or into this idea is we measure what we value. Okay. If we, we'll just dig into this example real quick. So this goes back to a previous example that we've talked about, which is the Expedia example, right? They measured how many calls each employee resolved each day, and it was really high, right? So it looked great. Every employee, they had a high number of resolved problem calls. It's like, man, they're killing it, right? The time it took to resolve each call, well, each call was being resolved very quickly. It was like, man, okay, see, that's the call center. Once again, they're doing great. Customer satisfaction was very high. And for a long time, they looked at these numbers and they considered, hey, things are going good, right? This looks great. These numbers are wonderful, right? But if we really consider what's being measured here, there was no incentive to prevent the calls from happening in the first place. When they finally realized that, they shifted their approach to preventing these calls. They saved millions of dollars, because the reality is all these measures were an indication that there was a problem. Okay. It wasn't an indication that they were doing well. It was actually an indication that they were doing bad. Why were they taking so many calls? Why were they being resolved so quickly and easily? We'll look at another example here. So, once again, what do we measure? Well, let's look at what type of employees do we tend to reward, right? Once again, what are we valuing? What are we portraying that we truly value to our employees? Do we reward the hero? Okay. Those who rush in to fix an issue to get the product out the door, for example, right? Or to get that last minute sell, right? Things are coming to a head. Something's got to happen. This guy rushed in and he fixed it. And he made it happen. He got it out the door, and we're all celebrating that. We maybe even give him a reward. We recognize him, whether that's via email or in the next company presentation, right? And it feels good to be the hero too, to be on that side and rush in and save the day, right? And that even that old idea, there is a rush to it. What about those who are great at resolving, once again, customer calls in a help center, right? Or the salesman who squeezes in that last minute sale with a good discount for the customer, and he got it at the last second, right? Or should we consider that those who prevent the problems from keeping the product from having to be crammed and shipped at the last second? How about we reward those guys? Why don't we value that so that we don't have that last second rush? Or those who keep the customers from calling in the first place. We need to value and reward those types of people, right? Or those who make sales at regular intervals without providing discounts, right? Because all these things, and I'm skipping ahead here, so we'll get to that in a second. But the point is these things, they portray to our employees what we truly value, right? So we say, well, yeah, we don't want a bunch of customers calling all the time, but yet we, once again, reward the person that is constantly resolving these crazy issues, right? And so where are our resources being focused? This kind of brings us to the idea of problem blindness, right? Not even recognizing that there's a problem. That was Expedia for a long time, right? They looked at these measures and it was like, man, everything's great. We don't really have a problem. So they thought, right? So we really have to redefine what a problem is, right? How do we identify it? So for instance, there is a problem if there's a rush. If you got to rush to get it out the door, that means there's a problem, right? So we ought to be immediately looking into that. If customers are calling for help, right, there's a problem. We need to keep them from having to make that call in the first place. Or if a discount is necessary, we have to consider why do we have to give them a discount? Do they not trust us Have we not built that relationship that we need to have? Do they not believe that the value is there? Not only, particularly for them, that they're going to get that ROI. Have we not been able to understand their business well enough? So the idea, and we have this picture in the background of a sinking ship, right? Because there's this constant idea of, well, we get all that, we understand, but we don't have time, right? We're stuck right now, and if we stop bailing water, then we're going to sink, right? As soon as I stop bailing water, it's going to start filling up because I'm barely keeping us afloat. But if you consider, hey, stop bailing that water, and sure, more water is going to come in for just a little bit. And then when you fix the hole, the water stops, right? So let's fix the hole in the ship instead of just continuing to bail it out. I got a funny example here. This kid digging and tossing the dirt in on himself, right? But the reality is that's the situation that we often live in, right? We've dug this hole with poor processes and poor procedures and stuff, and then we feel that we're stuck down there, because if we stop to try and address the issues and change, then we're going to run into this wall. But the reality is all too often we're throwing that dirt that we say, hey, if we stop digging, then this hole's going to fill up. But the reality is we're just throwing the dirt on our heads because we can't even throw the dirt out of the hole. And we're the ones throwing it on ourselves, right? So if we just stop, take a moment, and sure, there may be, and this is something we can get into later, but there may be a short-term hit, right? But once again, what is your goal? What are you focused on? What is your purpose? And what are you measuring? Are you only measuring the short term? Or is 1 year, 2 years, 5 years more important? And this is something we'll get into later, not today, but there's all kinds of studies about that type of focus. Do you have a 5-year plan? And if you do, and you want to achieve, then you might need to take a little short hit now so that you can stop bailing the water and fix that hole. Because then once you fix the hole, you can get all the water out, and now your boat's off to the races. So how do we communicate all this? And I've kind of hit on this a little bit, right? We communicate it some in the way we value things, right? And, what we're measuring. But what about how we talk? And this is actually an example from the new book we're giving out. So there was a company, and they had a new CEO. And that CEO reduced compensation, particularly for low producers, and had this whole new plan. The managers, they had all kinds of things to say about it. They said it's hard to keep our salespeople. They don't get how hard it is. The day being the new management CEO and so forth. That they don't get how hard it is in this market. That this will push our salespeople out to our competitors. And the salespeople, they don't believe in this plan. And frankly, as a manager, I don't either. I don't really believe in it. I don't think it's going to work. So they brought in a consultant, right? And so the consultant simply asked, hey, why do you think the leadership is making this change, right? Do you think they want the company to fail? Of course, saying, well, no, they don't want the company to fail. Do you think they want to lose good salespeople? Do you think they want to make less sales? Of course, they answer, well, no, they don't want that. So ultimately, the CEO and management must believe this is a good idea, right? And so the question kind of became, why didn't the managers understand how or why this plan would help, right? Was that the failure of the managers, or was it failure of communicating that from the CEO level down to management, right? So that they could then once again communicate that down to their salesmen. And short story is, they made that shift. They improved their communication, and ultimately it was highly successful, right? So let's kind of look at another example here. And one, we have to believe in that purpose, right? Because you notice in that last example, they said, look, they don't believe in it. And frankly, I don't believe in it either. And the point was the managers, they didn't truly believe in that plan. They were trying to portray it. They were saying what they had been told to say, but they didn't actually believe what they were saying. And their employees picked up on that, right? And so that's the other catch, is we have to really believe In our purpose, do I really believe that our purpose is to improve American manufacturing? Absolutely. We talk about it all the time. That's my purpose. In fact, that's been, in essence, my drive my whole career, is to improve, to solve problems, to make things better for people so that they can work easier, not be so stressed at work, right? And by default, that results in higher production, right? Lower costs due to, medical costs due to carpal tunnel, for instance, and so forth, right? And so your people can tell. They can tell if you really believe in that or not, or if you're just saying it because you're saying it, right? And so that's kind of the point here is, how do you talk? What's coming out in your daily talk, right? Whenever you talk to your employees, or is it only coming out during a presentation, right? Or when you talk to them daily, how are you talking to them, right? What are the words that you're using? And once again, what do you reward? What are your goals? And your employees, a good way to measure, right, the success of this culture change and the success of your talk is, how do they talk? What are they talking about? What words do they use and permeate their everyday talk? What are their goals? And so you'll notice this, you probably noticed that the pictures from the movie The Field of Dreams, right? The Field of Dreams, there's the famous quote, "If you build it, they will come," right? And it seems kind of corny. Great movie though. Seems kind of corny, but let's look at this really, right? What comes first, the players or the field? Well, the reality is you can't have players without a field for them to play on. It's that simple, right? So let's look at what comes first, a good product or revenue. Well, that one's pretty obvious, right? If you don't have a product, or you got a junk product, it's not going to sell, well, then you're not going to have any revenue, right? So we understand we got to have a good product or people aren't going to buy it. If people don't buy it, we've got no revenue, right? We've got no income. That's obvious and easy. But what comes first, increased revenue or better business practices, right? And that's where things get a little more difficult, because we can't stop what we're doing today. If we do, we're going to start hurting. But if you want to increase your revenue, you want to, ultimately get back to making more money, well, then you've got to improve your business practices, right? Move upstream your business practices, right? So we'll have another quick poll here. And while y'all are going through that poll, I'll continue on. We're almost finished. So hopefully that poll, there we go. So while the poll is, what is your biggest inhibitor to culture change? So while y'all looking at that, we'll finish up here. And the reality is end of the day, change is difficult, right? So a study concluded that when it comes to creating a digital culture, the scariest resource isn't necessary technological know-how, but leadership. The role of leaders fundamentally changes. They need to learn new behaviors and let go of old habits, right? And then, as we've talked about, that will ultimately permeate down throughout the organization. If you have people thinking about how they can be more efficient, how they can automate, remove unnecessary repetitive tasks, if that's the way they're thinking, then they will naturally find the solution. You will ultimately end up with the automation, right? You will ultimately end up with PDM, PLM, or so forth, right? And people will use it, right? There's numerous, I've seen it myself, failed implementations, right? So because, hey, people weren't using the software because they didn't believe in it. The culture change hadn't occurred. Software had been shoved in, but no buy-in, no culture change, right? And so once again, this study found that it was behavior was the biggest factor not the financial investment or the existence of great talent, but it was the behaviors within an organization that resulted in success or failure. And so studies show it takes approximately 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic, right? It takes time and it takes work. It's not easy. So once again, just to kind of round back up, 90% achieved breakthrough due to culture change. 17% were able to achieve it without the culture change. So interesting findings here. Time seems like it's always an issue. In fact, when we just started this, Christina said, "Hey, how are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm doing good, but man, I've got a lot to do, right? Never enough time for it. Always an issue. Communication, absolutely. That's the difficult part, and that's why I tried to focus on that in this presentation here. And that's something that I feel like I'm very recently just beginning to get a grasp of its importance, right? And so just to finalize things up, right? We've talked about culture change, but hey, what can KETIV do with that, right? We've talked about all these other areas that we can help you improve in engineering, design automation, CAD automation, simulation, so forth. But what about culture, right? Well, KETIV does have what we call a customer success team. And so when we come in and we work with you guys and we help put something in place, whatever that is, custom automation, existing, new software, or even just existing software you already have, our customer success team gets involved. And they, for instance, if it's just existing software, they'll look at, okay, what is the use? Are you using all of its abilities, right? Most people don't even realize they have product design and manufacturing collection, and they live in Inventor, and they don't even realize one, Inventor's full capabilities, okay? Tolerance analysis, and the benefits there. They don't understand, all the other pieces of software that could come along with that they could be utilizing, such as AutoCAD Electrical. I dealt with that the last place I was at. They didn't even realize they had AutoCAD Electrical and its interoperability to Inventor and its ability to do the routed systems and connect all these pieces together. They didn't even know it existed, right? So we do that. The other thing we do is we look at, okay, we've provided this new custom automation. How is it, are you getting the usage that you expected? Are people buying into that idea? And we can help with that too. We have a system called Pinnacle that we have existing content and can create custom content. I just finished that as a project and presented that earlier today, the completion of that project, in which we created a large amount of custom content for some custom automation, not only for onboarding of its use, but continued knowledge growth. And we had this presentation to help change people's, get that buy-in, build the culture that needs to go along with that. So we can help there too. So our next presentation is not on May 11th because that's today. I forgot to update that slide. But it will be next month, the second Wednesday of each month. Sorry, when is that?
June 8th.
June 8th. Yeah, thank you. I'll try to make sure I get that update next time. So yeah, we'll have a June 8th. We'll have the next in our series, and they were always available for one-on-one discussion. And let's go ahead and have our winner for today. Do we have that yet, Christina?
Yes, our giveaway winner, I put them in a random number generator, and our winner is Tom Kemp. Awesome. So thanks for joining, Tom. I will email you and get you sent over your book and your gift card.
Wonderful. And then also we want to remind you, not for you guys, because this is more focused on the technical aspects, but we also have a weekly, we call it the KETIV Virtual Academy. And this would be really for your guys on the line, in a sense that, the engineers that actually work in the software day to day. We show different abilities. It's kind of like a training session in a sense. And that gives them opportunity to learn new things and maybe find some of those things that they didn't know existed. And so that's available each week as well. So we have a little bit of time for some Q&A. If anybody has any questions that they would like to ask. And of course, once again, always available. You can email me directly or call me directly at any point, and we can, help you if you just even have questions about, okay, what are you calling digital manufacturing, right? If you've missed some of those previous sessions, we can provide you links to that, or we can just talk one-on-one, and you can, air your concerns and questions at that point as well. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions. I very much appreciate your time in joining me for this series, and look forward to hopefully seeing you all again next month. Have a wonderful day.